Welcome to Live Forever Young Radio, and today we are back with Peter Forhan, Photobiomodulation expert. In the last show, we defined what photobiomodulation is and discussed the benefits. Now, if you haven't seen it, be sure to go back and check it out. In our second episode, we will be learning about Peter's company, JustLight, and how they've been able to develop new technology that can finally help to harness the powerful benefits of light. So sit back, relax, and get ready to live forever young.
I was thinking now, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your company, JustLight, the mission and the culture, and maybe a little bit about some of the people that work there, maybe your advisory board, whatever you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. So our mission at JustLight is to revolutionize healthcare through universal access to photobiomodulation. But we did not start as a photobiomodulation company. We actually started at a 5-gallon bucket in my apartment while I was building a UV light laundry machine. And over the course of the summer of 2019, after becoming obsessed with how we can use UV light to kill germs, I began building a series of laundry machines, starting with a 5-gallon bucket and working my way up to a grow tent that you would grow plants indoors with retrofitted UVC lights inside. And I started using this and it would work really well on my clothing. It would deodorize it and kill germs in the span of minutes without any water and a very low relative energy amount. And so with this sort of pre-product, people would ask me, can you sit in that and clean your skin? And I would kind of laugh because you could, of course, clean your skin with it, but it would also highly damage you and potentially cause skin cancer and sunburns. But then me as kind of a curious scientist, I said, well, how dangerous is it? Could I sit in it for a second and clean my body and not suffer damage? And this is really the first question that led to me to now look at the biophysics of light, not just the physics of light. And what I found was extremely interesting, and it led to what I believe to be the longest running human experiment on UVC exposure myself, which is 967 days to the day that I haven't used body soap, face wash, or deodorant. I have only used UVC germicidal light, water, and washcloths. And the reason I started this experiment is I found amazing clinical studies showing that the dose of UVC germicidal light needed to kill germs was an order of magnitude beneath the dose that was used that would cause lasting or even acute skin damage. And when I had this insight that we could, with proper precision, dose human hands and human skin to kill germs without lasting damage, I pivoted from a laundry machine company to a UVC hand cleaning company. And this came about 4 months before the COVID-19 2020 pandemic. And so March 2020 comes around, I spent 4 months in this product and the phone starts ringing. I am able to onboard investors, start growing the team. And at this time, our first employee joined, who is now our Chief Scientific Officer, Dr. Janet Price. She's a PhD from the University of Michigan who studied microbiology. And she was the first one that really took the product and did the rigorous evaluation of having people come in. We'd test their hands for microorganisms. They would use soap and water hand cleaning, or they'd use Halo, our UVC germicidal light cleaner. And the results that we got in the summer of 2020 were incredible. They were so good that we were able to raise a major investment from a Japanese conglomerate named Asahi Kasei that gave us our first major seed investment to make UVC light skin disinfection universally accessible. After receiving this investment from Asahi Kasei, I said, I'm going to become the expert on the biophysics of light, and I'm going to read everything that exists about UV light on skin. And one of the first things that I turned to was I found the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1903 was awarded to a man named Niels Finsen, who might sound familiar. Niels Finsen was using UVC light to treat lupus vulgaris. And so I bought his journal online and I turned to page 1, paragraph 1. And on page 1, paragraph 1, he described how he cured smallpox with red light therapy. And this was genuinely the first time that I had ever considered red light therapy, infrared light, photobiomodulation. So I read his little journal, still to date my favorite book. I carry it with me everywhere. And I said, wait a minute, if he's using red light in 1896 to reverse smallpox, what are we doing with red light therapy today? And then I was so lucky to stumble across the massive clinical database of photobiomodulation that was created by one of our board advisors, a dentist out of Finland named Dr. Vladimir Hasanket. He has spent 10 years taking every peer-reviewed PubMed clinical study dealing with photobiomodulation, low-level laser therapy, red light therapy, phototherapy, you name it, compiling them into one database, which is now indexed, searchable, and color-coded by safety and efficacy. And in going through this database, I found the first thing that really made me pause was Alzheimer's disease. I saw that every single clinical on Alzheimer's disease using photobiomodulation returned safe and effective results. And I couldn't believe it. As someone who's lost a grandmother to dementia and many other millions of Americans who have lost loved ones or are currently suffering from dementia, we know this is a disease without therapeutic, options. But here I am looking at systematic reviews showing that red light therapy is actively reversing the decline. So we made another pivot as a company. We went from being primarily a UV light skin cleaning company to now being a photobiomodulation accessibility company. And I stress accessibility because we are not inventing photobiomodulation. We aren't the researchers, the scientists who have been doing the amazing work to put it there. We are simply connecting the clinical results to the average consumer. And the way that we connect clinical results to the average consumer is we make photobiomodulation understood, accessible, and friendly. Understood by having wonderful scientific conversations like this to talk in long form about the science. Accessible through our app that does all of the hard work behind the scenes. If you want to use it for your brain, you tap brain, and we take care of selecting the dose, wavelength, time, and all the other parameters based on clinical insights, basically reducing down the need for a medical practitioner so that you can have these amazing results in your own home. And we've also now made it friendly and familiar through our sunflower product. Sunflower, of course, evoking feelings of, what sunflower evokes in all of us, but really taking that to heart, mimicking the biology and the form factor of a sunflower, we found to actually be the best form factor of the product. A flexible stem that you can bend the photobiomodulation device towards yourself, direct it at your knee or your neck or wherever you're directing the light to, and then simply tapping the app, clicking go to deliver that precision light. So now as a company today, JustLight has gone from a UV light laundry company to a UV light hand and body cleaning company to now a photobiomodulation company. And the process of learning at every step is what makes us so excited to have these conversations, because we didn't get into this to say what can work on Alzheimer's. We came to Alzheimer's only after finding that there's already been amazing clinical results showing these impacts, and that we need to step in to make it accessible and understood to the wider public.
That's really great. And so tell us a little bit about what goes on in someone's brain who is using the sunflower, who has Alzheimer's disease, and also what are the importance of the different wavelengths, the distance to the person's body and head as they're being treated, right? And the duration and things like that.
Absolutely. So first, the longer the wavelength, generally speaking, the deeper into the body the light will travel. So red light is about 660 nanometers, and the infrared in the range of photobiomodulation is about 800 to 1,000 nanometers. So that longer infrared light bypasses the skull and is absorbed by the brain. And when the brain absorbs infrared light, incredible things happen. One, these cells directly synthesize energy from the photons. So the water, the intracellular water, both in the cell and in the mitochondria, trap photons and convert it into electricity. This electricity is then used by the mitochondria to power respiration or the production of ATP, the main energy molecule of the body. And that water absorbing light also happens within the cell, not just within the mitochondria. That leads to direct conversion of photons to energy. But as the brain absorbs infrared light, we also see a marked increase in cerebral blood flow, especially microcirculation or capillary blood flow. So as we age and as we live less healthy lives, one of the first things to fail is our microcirculation, or the last step of getting blood from our heart all the way to the cell. As those capillary tubes absorb infrared light, we see capillary action happen. This is the exact same phenomenon that when you dip a napkin in a cup of water, the water runs up the napkin against the force of gravity. And this looks strange and we kind of dismiss it. That's actually an electrical process that's happening, as weird as it sounds to say. And what's happening in our body is just like dipping that napkin into the water. If that water was completely frozen, you wouldn't see any water run up. We are living in an environment on Earth that's a perfect temperature that we're at equilibrium with, where water can exist in all of its phases. And as our capillary tubes absorb infrared light, they actually electrically pull blood into the cell through a really cool process that deals with the fourth phase of water, or hexagonal water, or structured water, or the water that we find in things like Jell-O. Not a solid ice, not a liquid water, not a gas, but actually the intracellular cytoplasmic water. And so the third major thing that happens, so our brain synthesizes energy from photons, our brain increases microcirculatory blood flow, or capillary blood flow, and our brain reduces in inflammation. So the reason we inflame is the body's signaling for more energy. The body says, we have a disease, we have an injury, we have an insult. We're going to inflame our cells as a request to the body to give us more energy, more blood, more attention. And the way that we signal for this is we release proteins called inflammatory cytokines within the cell. These little proteins are the signals for inflammation. What's really incredible about red and infrared light is those cytokines have a bond, and that bond is broken apart by photons in the red and infrared range, basically saying inflammation is also regulated by light exposure. And it's regulated by light exposure because inflammation is also signaling for infrared light exposure. This directly increases blood flow. This directly increases energy. And so those three mechanisms, while all very important and happen, it's almost simpler to think about, instead of how does light help the brain, what happens to a brain without proper light? We know that a plant moved inside will begin wilting, and we'll say, oh, that plant needs more sunlight, it's wilting. Yet when we remove a human or any organism from solar exposure and put them inside of an industrial society for years and years on end, we begin wilting, externally and internally. And we know this intuitively. If you take a human and put them in a cave for a year with no solar exposure, but plenty of food and water, a year later, when they came out of that cave, we would identify what's wrong with their body. We could see their skin paling, their hair falling out, their muscles atrophying, their brain withering, their organs withering. All these phenomenons we know, but we don't recognize that they're happening to ourselves on our own body, especially on the regions of our body that are covered from sunlight. So one kind of question that I come to people when we're talking about Alzheimer's is, do you think that any patients in a nursing home or retirement facility suffering from Alzheimer's are getting plenty of daily sunlight and plenty of daily water? If a plant were wilting and withering, we would say, get it plenty of daily sunlight and plenty of daily water. And with humans, we say, what's the best drug we can develop? How can we solve for this on a biochemical point of view without recognizing the physics at play? So a brain without proper light restricts in blood flow. It's a lot harder for blood to flow all the way to the cells. It has a lot lower energy because instead of directly converting light into energy, the body is responsible for making all of that energy. And the brain is inflaming itself, saying, warning, warning, alarm, something is wrong, something is missing. We don't know what it is. We're just telling you we're inflamed. And so the same reasons that a brain without proper light is going to wither and break down are the exact reasons as to why light also helps a brain thrive and regenerate. And we've even now seen, clinically speaking, the regeneration of neurons, neurogenesis. This is something that we previously thought would be impossible and is observed by using red and infrared light on the brain, an extremely exciting revolution in science.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. You know, we have a podcast that's called The Importance of Circulation for Your Health.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very good furtherance of the information about circulation. And we also have a podcast about limitless brain power. And likewise, this will be an enhancement for that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you mentioned a little bit earlier called a light bath, what it used to be, I guess, back in the Roman times, and now how do you create a light bath today?
Yeah, so in Roman times and the age of Hippocrates and everything else, we would have what is called solariums, which were filtered or red and blue panes of glass that would filter sunlight coming through. So while things like jaundice are better treated with blue light, things like degenerative disease are better treated with red light. So people would get color diagnosed and get these sun baths of filtered sunlight. What we have now is, one, you can absolutely still take filtered light baths. And in fact, doing filtered light baths by using the incredible power of the infinite energy source of the sun and a material that only lets certain light colors through is a wonderful way to take advantage of this principle. Simply sunbathing with exposed skin for more time every day is going to cause pronounced health impacts. And if you're worried about UV exposure, there's good news. Every weather app now has the UV index listed, and there's many hours of the day, mostly morning and evening, where there's zero UV light present. So you can't develop any UV light burns. You can't develop UV light-induced skin cancer when the UV light is zero. So if you have the ability and the privacy to take completely nude, full body baths to maximize surface area exposure, I highly recommend doing it in the morning and in the evening, every day as consistently as you can. This will lead to circadian rhythm regulation, something hugely important for sleep and mood, serotonin, melatonin balance, and it will directly lead to more energy production within the body. As our skin absorbs this light, we can store that light energy as electricity through the capacity of water and use it throughout the rest of our day.
Naked sunbathing. Now that's what I'm talking about. But if going au naturel isn't for you, be sure to check out the third and last video with photobiomodulation expert Peter Forhan. He's going to explain how to build an inexpensive indoor light bath so you can get all the benefits of light therapy without scaring the neighbors. Thanks for listening to Live Forever Young Radio.